All right, this is not good for the anybody but Shedeur Mafia, okay? It appears that Deshaun Watson may have been having.
What if I told you the most expensive arm in the history of professional football is already running out of gas, and the season hasn't even started? There is a storm brewing in Cleveland, and it's not the kind that brings a championship trophy. It's the kind that ends careers and resets entire franchises. For the better part of 2 years, the Cleveland Browns have been walking a tightrope with a $230 million weight tied to their ankles. We've heard the excuses about rust, the talk about recovery, and the promises of a new version of Deshaun Watson. But right now, the whispers coming out of the building aren't about touchdowns or playoffs. They're about fatigue. They're about an arm that might be failing before the first rail hit is even delivered. The latest reports from the spring program should have every Browns fan looking at the nearest exit. Mary Kay Cabot, someone who knows the inner workings of this team better than almost anyone, dropped a bombshell that should be headline news. She noted that toward the end of the recent sessions, Watson's
weekend, our guy Earl the Pearl, who unfortunately is working from home today, is not in with us to help defend his point, was talking about the Browns, the upcoming season, and how much of a difference he believes Todd Monken can make as opposed to Kevin Stefanski. And on his show on 92.3 The Fan, from 8 to 12, tune into Earl and Spencer every weekend, Earl had this to say. And
arms seemed to tail off. Now, the team wants you to believe it's just a bit of soreness from a long layoff, but let's look at the reality. This is a surgically repaired shoulder we are talking about. He hasn't even put on the pads yet. He hasn't been sacked, he hasn't been chased out of the pocket, and he hasn't had to throw 50 times in a cold rain. If the fatigue is setting in during t-shirts and shorts, what happens in the fourth quarter against a divisional rival? The math just doesn't add up for a comeback story. People like to point out that Watson had the entire summer and the start of the 2024 season to get right, yet here we are, still talking about whether his shoulder can handle a basic practice schedule. If you're a fan, you have to ask yourself when the wait-and-see period officially ends. When does the most guaranteed contract in sports...
This was put out there by one Mary Kay Cabot. Okay, this is courtesy of the Dogs of Cleveland Browns podcast, where it says on Orange and Brown Talk, Mary Kay Cabot mentioned something interesting about about Deshaun Watson from the spring program. Okay, I think he needs to get some proper rest over the break because I thought his arm seemed to
history become a permanent anchor. The reality is that the NFL is a league of what have you done for me lately, and for Watson, the answer is not much. But while one star is fading, another is rising, and the shadow he's casting is reaching all the way from Colorado to Cleveland. Enter the Shedeur Mafia. The conversation has shifted from can Watson win to when does Shedeur Sanders...
a head coach before. I love you, Earl, and listen, Earl is a diehard fan. Okay, he's biased when it comes to this conversation. I have people still to this day.
Arrive. The hype surrounding Shedeur isn't just about his stats, it's about an aura of winning that Cleveland hasn't felt in a long time. There is a growing belief that this team needs to stop trying to fix a broken past and start drafting a new future. Shedeur Sanders represents more than just a talented quarterback, he represents a...
Me talking about the Browns, because I'm not biased when it comes to the Browns. If you just want to hear fluff, then listen to OnlyFans all the time. But if you want an opinion that's not going to be biased, and it's more likely to be...
culture shift. He brings the kind of confidence that doesn't care about a franchise's cursed history. But bringing in a superstar rookie means admitting the Watson era was a total failure, and that is a pill the front office is finding very hard to swallow. The organization is trying to mask these cracks with a massive coaching overhaul. The name on everyone's lips is Todd Monken.
Football player activities have happened to you yet, and your arm is already running out of gas in t-shirts and draws, throwing to wide receivers that can't get hit by defensive backs? What are we talking about? Shedeur Sanders needs to be QB1 of this team. It's that simple, okay? Deshaun Watson has shown no signs, no implications.
The debate is simple. Can a new head coach, a guy with a real personality and a fresh philosophy, actually buy you more wins? Some insiders are claiming Monken is worth at least 3 extra wins compared to the previous regime. They talk about discipline, better play calling, and a locker room that actually wants to play for their leader. It sounds great on paper.
You can't quantify, say, oh, this head coach, you put Bill Belichick on this team, that might be worth a win, maybe here or there, maybe a different scenario, but you can't say he's worth a certain amount. But I see where Earl's coming from, and I think this all just points to things had soured so much under Kevin Stefanski.
But there's a cold truth that many are ignoring. No coach, not even the legends like Andy Reid or Bill Belichick, can magically conjure wins if the talent on the field is compromised. And that brings us to the most terrifying part of this entire puzzle. Imagine a Cleveland Browns team without Myles Garrett. For years, Garrett has been the one constant, the player who single-handedly changes game plans and forces opposing quarterbacks into mistakes. He is the
might be better, but especially at DC, it's unlikely that Mike Rutenberg is going to be better than Jim Schwartz. I find that hard to believe. The other two, yeah, that's certainly possible. But and special teams, maybe, fine.
reason the Browns won games they had no business being in. But if you remove that generational talent from the equation, the entire structure of the team collapses. You can have the best defensive coordinator in the world, but if your defense can't get a stop because their centerpiece is gone, the scoreboard isn't going to care about your new philosophy. When you run the numbers, the outlook is even bleaker. If you were to run 1,000 computer simulations on this roster as it stands, the results would shock you. Most of those...
Nothing. Now, you could disagree, fine. I mean, it's all subjective. There's no facts to back any of this up. It's just an opinion. There's no way to quantify a coach helping you win games. And certainly a coach matters. Let me make clear, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. But as I've always said, I think there's a couple of really good coaches. I think there's a couple of really terrible coaches. And most of the guys in the league, in my opinion, and Todd Monken's probably in this group,
simulations don't see an 8-win season or a playoff run. They see a team struggling to crack 6 wins. Why? Because the margin for error in this league is razor thin. When you combine an aging, fatigued quarterback with a defense that's losing its heartbeat, you get a recipe for a top 5 draft pick. The discipline issues of the past might be solved by a new coach, but discipline doesn't throw a 60-yard touchdown pass or sack the quarterback on 3rd and long.
Best player in Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett is the most impactful player on this team. Part of the reason you won 5 games last year is Myles Garrett. Because other teams have to...
There is a sense of desperation in the air that you can't ignore. The team is trying to stay optimistic, talking about moving in the right direction and proper rest, but the clock is ticking. Fans are tired of hearing about potential while they watch other teams in the division pull further and further away. The era of making excuses for underperformance has to end. Whether it's Watson's arm...
Monken's got a personality. Todd Monken is a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah.
And we like that so much. He's got everyone moving in the right direction, and we want to believe.
None of that has anything to do with winning games, by the way.
Right. But it makes you feel more confident, to Chris's point. As a fan, it makes you feel better. And he could end up being a better coach. I'm not denying that he could.
Finally giving out, with the front office finally admitting they made a historic mistake, something has to give. The Cleveland Browns are at a crossroads, and the path they choose will define the franchise for the next decade. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new coach or the hope of a high-profile rookie like Shedeur Sanders. But at the end of the day, football is a brutal business of results. If Watson can't prove he's still a top-tier athlete, the $230 million experiment won't just be remembered as a bad trade, it will be remembered as the move that broke the Browns. Perhaps the most surprising part of this whole saga isn't that it's
terrible group. You don't know what Todd Monken is. He's never been a head coach. Kevin Stefanski had experience. You lost Jim Schwartz, one of the best DCs in the league, for a guy who's never been a DC. You're a new offensive...
But how long everyone tried to pretend it was working. As we look toward the future, one thing is certain, the Cleveland locker room is about to look very different, and the change might be much more drastic than anyone is prepared for. Could we be witnessing the final days of the most expensive gamble in NFL history? Only time will tell, but the clock is ticking louder than ever.